This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Have you heard about the 2018 study that showed half of prenatal vitamins tested had unacceptable levels of heavy metals? No? Well, now you have. I'm Kat, mother of three and founder of Ritual, the company making traceability the new standard in the supplement industry. I remember staring at my prenatal vitamins and finding all these things I was trying to avoid. High amounts of heavy metals, synthetic colorants, and unnecessary ingredients. So, at 4 months pregnant, I quit my job and started Ritual because I believe that all women deserve to know what they're putting in their bodies and why. I'm so proud of our prenatal vitamin. The ingredients are 100% traceable, it's third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals, and recently received the Purity Award from the Clean Label Project. You see, we trace like a mother because, let's be honest, no one cares quite like a mother. But don't just take my word for it. Trace for yourself with 25% off at ritual.com/podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Xcast. The truth is in here. I'm Tony Black, your host, and today we are covering episode 4 of season 2, Sleepless. And it's my absolute pleasure to be joined by my longest-term podcast pal for the Xcast, as in the person who's done the most episodes of season 1. It's Andrew Brooker. He's back. How you doing, mate?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. It's great. It's great to have you back. It's great to have you back for the second season. A pretty good season, all told, of the X-Files.
Absolutely. It's really cool to be back. I've been quite looking forward to this. I've genuinely been really excited to get back into watching, having an excuse to get back into watching X-Files again and come back and record with you. I'm really excited for it.
Oh, great! You've got some interesting episodes you have this season. This won't be your only one, and we'll talk more about that later. But yeah. How you been anyway? What's been happening? Anything interesting in Brooker World?
In Brooker, no, same shit, different day for me, mate. I just sit, I have my same seat on the sofa, and I just watch whatever I have to watch to facilitate whatever podcast I happen to be on that week.
Well, it works because this week you've been saying Tony Todd in a mirror 10 times.
I have.
And that can only mean one thing, that you've been watching this week's episode. So let's get straight into talking about Sleepless. Sleepless is the 4th episode of the second season of The X-Files. It first aired on October the 7th, 1994, was written by Howard Gordon, and was directed by Rob Bowman. The episode sees a mysterious death in a hotel room in New York City, which is investigated by Mulder and his brand new partner, Alex Krycek, which may lead to a mysterious series of experiments involving sleep deprivation.
Someone like you.
Agent Mulder.
No, come on.
Yeah. It's your 302. Assistant Director Skinner just approved it.
There's a mistake here. There's been another agent assigned to the case.
That would be me. Krycek. Alex Krycek.
Skinner didn't say anything about taking on a partner.
It wasn't Skinner. Actually, I opened the file 2 hours before your request, so technically it's my case.
And you already talked to the police?
Yep. Just hung up on the officer in charge a few minutes ago. Detective named Horton. Turns out Grissom called 911 to report a fire.
I heard the tape.
Did you hear that forensics found a spent fire extinguisher on the floor? Grissom's prints were all over it. The walls and floor in his living room were covered with ammonium phosphate.
But no trace of fire.
Not even a burnt match.
Is that all you know?
Yeah, so far. What do you think it means?
Listen, I appreciate the show and tell, and I don't want you to take this personally, but I work alone. I'll straighten things out with Skinner.
It's my case, Agent Mulder. Look, I may be green, but I had the case first. I'm not going to give it away so quickly.
All right, I'll tell you what. I got some work to finish up around here. Why don't you go down to the motor pool and requisition us a car, and I'll meet you down there.
That's all? I mean, you don't have a problem with us working together?
Hey, it's your party.
I'll get the car.
So, Brooker, out of 10, what are you going to give Sleepless?
Cool. I think I would give Sleepless probably a 7. I think 7 is a fair number for it. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun episode. I really liked it.
What was it? What was it you liked so much to give it a 7 then?
While it brought certain things back and it introduced you ish to people like Krychek and certain other people we'll talk about later on. It was fun. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of things that have inspired this particular story. From stories we've had from the days of Vietnam and things like that. But there's this kind of it felt like a really good investigative episode with a little bit of supernatural stuff as well. And of course, it's got the always awesome Tony Todd in it.
Can't go wrong with him, can you? Whenever he crops up, he's just ace. And he tends to crop up in the majority of 90s and noughties genre shows, whether it's X-Files, Star Trek, Smallville, whatever. Take your pick. He's pretty much in them. But yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? Because it's in this patch of, and we've talked about this in the last few episodes when we've covered them, but it's in this patch, this really interesting patch of the X-Files, where obviously the X-Files are closed down. Mulder and Scully aren't working together anymore, technically. And there are all these undercurrents of conspiracy underneath what are traditionally quite standard episodes. So you've got the Fluke Man, which was the host. You've got, the subliminal messaging in Blood. And in Sleepless, it comes back in a big way with the, undercurrent of these sleep deprivation experiments. You've got the whole, you have a friend in the FBI stuff and Skinner. And as we see Mr. X and Krychek coming in, there's all that stuff weaving into the, what would in season 1 have been a standard episode? Would have been Mulder and Scully investigating mysterious locked room mystery. But there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
It has this section where, and I think quite a large portion of season 2 has this, where because they're not working together, you have an X-Files, a general X-Files episode, a ghosty one, or like this one, and there's a weird thing about it that you've got to look at, but you've also got the story of those two trying to work together, even though they're not really supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it makes for actually really, really good and interesting TV.
Yeah, it does. I think it's a good, solid episode. I think I'd give it a 7 myself. Actually, I think I'd go with a 7. I think it's solid. It's got a lot to it. It's got a good central storyline that's well told. I think it's very well directed as well. It was Rob Bowman who comes back to direct this one. I don't think he directed one since last season. And Rob Bowman obviously goes on to direct the X-Files movie, and he directs some really great episodes him and Kim Manners are probably the two standout directors of the X-Files over the 10 years, really.
I got to the end of it and I was like, well, that felt like it had gone really quick.
Pacing's really good, yeah. And it's just got a little bit of a sheen to it, a bit of a polish, which most of these early episodes in season 2 have, actually. They've all got that, and obviously next week with Dwayne Barry, that's got it even more of the case, but it is really good in that sense. It was an interesting challenge for Howard Gordon to write this. This is the first time that he'd written an X-File without Alex Ganzer, his normal collaborator. Yeah. And he talks about how there was quite a bit of insecurity about doing it on his own, and initially he wrote a different kind of story that he wanted to do about agricultural engineering, about genetically engineered plants. That was the original story outline he wrote with Chris Carter.
Sounds riveting.
Yeah, exciting stuff. But as he was writing it, he felt like there was something a little bit wrong with it. He said it was a good idea, but it was a very oblique script. And I spent an undue amount of time on it, really stressed out. He said, I was writing it and I said, this really stinks.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was 2 weeks away from turning the script in. He'd written a draft and he went to Chris Carter and he said, this really stinks. I can't even give it you. He went in then on his own, without outlining with Chris Carter, he went on his own to take on Sleepless. But what the story involving the genetically engineered plants is unknown. But it is interesting how originally he went with a different story. And he was really, at that point, he was new, he was a new writer. Obviously, Howard Gordon ended up going on to, create Homeland with Alex Ganzer, and he was doing 24 and all this. He's quite a big name now in showrunner circles, but this was the beginning, really, for him. It was one of his early experiences. So he was worried at this point that he wouldn't...
career for him.
That he had no career for him, but it led him to having sleepless nights.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was that point he went... No, he said, not being able to sleep for 2 nights, I began to think, gee, what if someone couldn't ever sleep? So he then started to come up with the idea of a man who couldn't sleep for a very long time, which obviously was the genesis of Augustus Cole, which then would have expanded into the whole episode. So it's interesting that it took his anxiety about not getting the genetically engineered plant script right to get the idea for Sleepless.
Well, you've got to find your inspiration where you can, don't you?
Well... yeah, exactly. And it's, funny how it comes out of that. Chris Carter did already have similar ideas about stuff. He said, it was an idea I'd had during season 1 about what makes the perfect soldier. And then it was Howard Gordon who married the idea of the super soldier, as not the super soldier that we later find in the X-Files, but this element of a super soldier, to a sleepless soldier. And in the end, he beat out the story in just 24 hours, Howard Gordon. So after having all that anxiety about the original plot, he got Sleepless very, very fast.
Yeah.
So, and as I say, it comes out well, and it blends a lot of the elements of myth arc and standard, mystery story very well, which is more weird science, isn't it, really, than supernatural this time round.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And but it works. It's because it's got that kind of maybe about the halfway point you get the kind of ghostly little thing happening. It works well going from the weird side. Like you say, it's not quite supernatural, but it does feel like it has that element to it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it really melded the two together very well.
It did a good fusion of both. So, yeah, Sleepless, as we've done now on the shows, we look at IMDb for an aggregate, and Sleepless, out of 2,333 votes, got 7.9 out of 10, which isn't one of the top tier on the X-Files, but it's still pretty good. It's still a pretty good aggregate. It puts it in probably roughly the middle of season 2. And I suppose if I was to rank the season, Sleepless would probably be around the middle, roughly.
Yeah.
I would say. Maybe slightly higher, maybe pushing towards the top 10. It'll be interesting to do a ranking, potentially, actually, this time round, and actually rank them by season. And we'll see where it sits, really. Where would you put it?
Top 10, definitely. I think for me it'll possibly be top 5. It's one of those that I always remembered. It's one of my favourite ones, like we've talked about previously with a lot of the episodes in season 1. It's one of those really fond episodes for me that I can go back and watch over and over again. It's always, it's the one with the Candyman in. I really like it. So I think just out of nostalgia's sake, more than anything else at the moment, it will definitely be top 5. But like we've talked about before, I'm really enjoying going back now and watching these entire seasons with a bit of a critical eye so we can do these podcasts. So it's quite possible that, as I have done with several of my favourite episodes in season 1, I will really drastically change my mind by the time I get to the end of 2.
Well, we'll see. We'll see when we get there. But yeah, until we do, let's have a more of an in-depth look then at Sleepless. So it begins with the central mystery, doesn't it, really? Well, actually, it starts with a lot of stock footage of New York, which seems to go on for quite a while.
Yeah, it's a really weird overhead shot as well, isn't it? You don't get much of that with the X-Files. So it seemed really out of place to have this really long just shot across the top of the New York skyline.
Well, I just got the feeling that they were they needed to pad out a few minutes.
Yeah.
Or and that they were doing certain things to sort of add that in. That's what I always suspect when you get a lot of stock footage. I'm like, yeah, you're trying to pad out here, aren't you? You haven't quite got enough material. Which could have something to do with the edits and the tweaks they had to make, which we'll get to when we talk much more about Mr. X later on. Could have something to do with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, then we've got the locked room mystery, which is what happens to Dr. Saul Grissom, who's the victim in this opening teaser. Because I like this. It's one of those classic sort of X-Files teasers where you've got something that isn't easily defined as to what it is. Sometimes in some of the X-Files episodes, you know it's like, oh, okay, that's going to be a vampire. Oh, okay, that's going to be a werewolf. Oh, okay, that's going to be whatever. In this one, you're not quite sure. It's like what happens to him when obviously he's sleeping, he wakes up, there's fire, and then it turns out that potentially he's died of fright or he's imagined the whole thing and he's dead. It's not quite clear exactly what has happened.
No, and it does this really nice job of making you stand there and look at it. As the firemen are coming up the stairs and they're down the corridor and there's no fire, you go, what the hell was going on?
Yeah.
You know, it does a really good job of upping the mystery really quickly. I liked how it done that.
Yeah, it establishes everything quite fast, and it's got a good pacing to it, this teaser. You know, it built, and you know, there's some really good key sort of motifs of key visual motifs, you know, and tapping into the strong human fears, like smoke coming through a door and being trapped in a room as fire's breaking. It is one of those classic human fears, and I think it sets all that up really well. And obviously, you know, we do get a brief shot of Tony Todd as Augustus Cole in the building, walking down the stairs as everyone else is rushing past. And at that point, you go, okay, Tony Todd's in it. He's obviously the villain. Don't you at that point?
Yeah, as he so often is.
Of course he's the villain. But it's a good visual. It's a good visual spot. He is definitely one of our first major celebrity spots, I think, of the season. Tony Todd.
He's a big one as well, isn't he? Even now, he's a big one to appear.
He is. I've briefly met Tony Todd.
Oh wow!
Yeah, very briefly. I was at the Birmingham sort of Comic Con event at the NEC in England. For those of you abroad, and it's nothing like San Diego Comic Con. I mean, if you've ever been to Birmingham, there's nothing like San Diego about it. It's basically
it's like San Diego Comic Con just with no daylight.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And a lot more sweaty men in Star Trek Generations t-shirts they bought in 1994 that don't fit them anymore, and Max, who are trying to collect.
The cosplayers are much more grim.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. But yeah, it is a decent event in that it's gone downhill lately. You used to get some really good guests. I mean, I've got a great story of how I tripped over in front of Mitch Pileggi, which I'll talk about one day on this. But right, but it's the guests have gone downhill. But a few years ago, Tony Todd was there, and Matt Latham, who's come on the podcast before, he was with us, and there was a few other people, and he got very excited at the thought of meeting Tony Todd because he loves lots of things that Tony Todd's been in, because Latham watches a ridiculous amount of TV. So he said, if I go up to him, right, and can I get a photo with him, you need to take the photo. And I was like, okay. So there was hardly anyone else there at that point. Tony Todd's there at his desk, and I was just hovering behind, and Matt Latham goes up to him, and in his little block switch Midlands tones, he goes, hello, Tony Todd, can I have a photo, please? Sorry, Latham.
I'm sure he'll appreciate the impression.
He's used to it now. He's fine. Yeah, and so he shook Latham's hand, and Tony Todd has got the biggest hands in the world. It's like they're insane. They're like huge. And he was like, "Yes, okay. Who's going to take the photo?" I was like, "I'll take the photo like this." So he was like, "Okay." So yeah, there's this. Matt Latham has a photo of him with Tony Todd that I took. So, and I think we shook his hand, and we were like, "Oh, thanks very much. Bye." That was it, basically.
You didn't do the love you,
loved you in Sleepless. I think Latham was doing that in his head, but it was still quite cool. But yeah, I'm saving the Mitch Pileggi story for another time, because that's a good one.
I'm looking forward to that one now.
It's a good one. We'll save that. We'll save it for something where Skinner's got a lot to do, like Avatar. We'll do it in that one, where it's a Skinner episode. Anyway, but yeah, the teaser ends with this mystery of what's happened to Grissom, and then we're out, and we're in the main thrust of the episode, and Mulder gets a tip off, doesn't he, with his morning paper?
Yeah,
gets a nice little cassette tape.
I did have to laugh. I looked at that and I went, if I show that, because I don't have personally, but we have a 16, 17-year-old apprentice at work, and I was like, I kind of want to show him this just to see if he knows what that is.
What, a cassette tape?
Yeah, I swear to God, I showed him a floppy disk the other day and he had no idea what it was.
What?
Yeah.
Are we that old now? Are we that old?
We are, mate. We really are.
Oh my god! I look at like X-Files when you see the microfiche, and like I think, oh well, we had better technology than that. But now it's like, yeah, if young people are looking at floppy disks and cassette tapes and going, never seen them before, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, we are akin to the dinosaurs now, mate.
We really are. That's terrifying. It did strike me though that it's assuming that it's Mr. X who drops this off for him.
Yeah.
It's not very clandestine and subtle, is it?
It's a bit shit. Just here's your paper and a tape.
Yeah, paper and tape.
Someone robs it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got a massive article ringed round. It's not even like subtly done. It's like a massive ring round. This. I was like, okay, it's not really that clandestine. I thought what was interesting though is that Mulder actually shows this to Skinner because I'm not sure he'd have done that before the events of, say, Little Green Men, when Skinner actually does like stand up for him a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he goes to him with the tape and says,
I need you to okay this for me.
Yeah, because he needs the FBI to get this case up and running. So it's understandable why he'd go to his boss. But at the same time, I almost get the feeling that if Mulder's been tipped off about something clandestine, he may not have done this before he was told, you have a friend in the FBI.
Yeah.
Which was what X had told him in The Host, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So maybe he's starting to trust Skinner a little bit more here.
Yeah, I think it's the beginning of that kind of what I'm not the arsehole you think I am kind of relationship that those two have for quite a few years from this point on. And it's nice to see that relationship build where he's only maybe trusts Skinner a little bit. But there is also that, well, I can't get any further without Skinner, so I kind of need to trust him. He
does even mention Deep Throat, not obviously by name, but he does say to Skinner, my last contact died for this. And I did wonder if Skinner knows who that guy was, because there's a little look. Skinner sort of looks away a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think, did you know about that? Did you know about Deep Throat? Did you know Mulder had a contact? Because obviously at this point, Skinner does know a bit more about the conspiracy and the people involved than he does later on. In the end, he's very much, the walls come down on him and he's not involved, and he's almost as much an outsider as Mulder, really.
Yeah.
But at this point, he's more involved, and he doesn't know everything, but he knows enough to give Mulder Smoky Man's address in one breath.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that there's sort of a suggestion that Skinner has one foot in all that darkness.
Is it maybe just because whether or not he's involved directly, obviously, he does spend a fair amount of time with Smoking Man.
Mm.
So do we just assume that he's assuming that Mulder has a contact who's no longer around? I mean, at some point, dead person must have appeared on someone's desk at the end of season one.
Maybe that is it. They do hang together a lot, don't they, Skinner and the Smoking Man?
Yeah, far too much for someone that turns out to be pretty innocent of everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of... Do you reckon they just chill with a beer at weekends? They go around... Skinner goes around to Smoky Man's really sort of bland flat, dark bland flat with some beer. And they sit...
Drink Budweiser and watch sports.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe that's a deleted scene. We'll get that one day. So yeah, anyways, Mulder thinks he's got the case. And then he's doing a little bit of initial investigation, and who turns up but his new partner, Alex Krycek, for the very first time in the show. Rat Boy.
Yep. I couldn't believe how fucking young he looked when I saw this episode the other day.
He really does, doesn't he? Because, I mean, Nick Lee, obviously, throughout the show, does get a little bit older, but he still manages to maintain, looking relatively young for his age, even like nearly 10 years later. But he's like, Krycek is so young and slick back and green here. I mean, he even says that. He says, I know I'm green later on.
I remember the first time I watched it, first time I watched it this week in preparation for the recording. I went, obviously before he opens his mouth, you see him on screen for quite a bit. And I went, is this the one where he turns up, but he's not Krycek? Because I don't remember him looking that young. I don't remember him turning up this early either.
Yeah, he was in Gender Bender, wasn't he, last year?
He was, yeah.
But he played, as we called on the podcast, Dave Krycek.
Dave Krycek.
Alex's cousin. We christened him Dave Krycek. We never see Dave Krychek again, which is a real shame. We said, Wayne Talbot and I said we should get him back for season 11.
How do you know you don't see him?
Well, maybe. It could, but who knows? That's a conspiracy theory.
Seen enough shitty twins comedies to know that, you never know.
Well, maybe when Krychek got locked in that silo in season 3, he didn't ever get out, and it was actually Dave Krychek.
Apart from a couple of times, you never see him with his plastic hand. He's always got a glove on, trying to hide it. We've both seen The Prestige. They do something similar there.
Now, there's a theory. Next season, we're going to talk more about this Dave Krychek theory. It's a good one. But it's an awkward meeting between Mulder and Krychek at this point, because Mulder obviously doesn't like the idea that Krychek's, muscling in on his case, even though Krychek says, well, I did get this just a few minutes before you did, so it's technically my case. But Mulder obviously doesn't trust anyone at this point. He doesn't have Scully partnering him. He says, no offence, but I work alone. Which isn't true, because he's still working with Scully, but he won't countenance working with anybody else.
No.
And what I liked about this was, and I'd forgotten just how much this is clear in this episode all the way through, there's a real mini arc in this episode between how Mulder goes from very much giving Krychek the cold shoulder as this new guy who's just, there, to the point where at the end he's just starting to give him a little window of trust. Obviously, and at that point, as we think, this Krychek's all right, isn't he? He's a nice enough bloke. And then we get the big reveal that he's evil.
Yeah. But it does set up several seasons worth of Krychek being a twat.
Yeah.
I quite liked it, though. I quite like you said, that little arc that they had. By the time you get to the end, or just before the end, you go, that's quite a... I can imagine the first time I watched that going, okay, maybe we've got somebody else that can help out here, and then, no, we don't.
No. He's an inside man. And that's what I was thinking all the way through watching this. I was thinking, imagine if you're just watching the X-Files for the first time and you don't know anything that's coming. Watching this, we're watching it with the knowledge that Krychek is, a bad guy. But imagine watching this for the first time in 1994. Yeah. You wouldn't really necessarily guess. I don't think all the way through this episode there are too many alert bells that make you go, oh well, Krychek's obviously a bad guy.
No, I don't think there are at all. I think no, none. Literally none.
Yeah, I don't think there is. Yeah. And it's hard to do that now. It's hard to look at that without thinking, well, we know that you're playing a role here. We know what you're really up to. Yeah. But watching it for the first time, I think you would be suckered in. I think, and that's what he does to Mulder. He does it very well, Krychek, to his credit. He actually does play this role of a green young agent who's trying to become Mulder's new partner really quite well. It's an interesting little arc that they have, and I didn't realise just how formed that was through this episode until I watched it back. But then we get Scully, and she's at Quantico. She's teaching again. And Gillian Anderson gets some lines here. She says at one point, atrioventricular nodes.
Yep.
And I that's the best thing in the world.
I sat there, like I do, I tried to take notes as I'm watching this. She said that, I went, I'm not going to fucking write that down. I just no. I said, if Tony brings it up in his quiz, he can have the fucking point. I don't want it.
Well, you're lucky, because I'm not that cruel. I'm not putting you through that. But I just thought that was amazing. I need to Google what atrioventricular nodes are, because I'm going to try and bring that into conversation when I can.
It'll be fake.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It'll be absolutely nothing.
Right, I'm going to Google this right now. Actually, here we go. Live. Atrioventricular nodes. Oh, it's there. It came straight up. The atrioventricular node is part of the electrical conduction system of the heart that coordinates the top of the heart. It electrically connects atrial and ventricular chambers. That's enough science for me. I can't read anymore. But
that all just went completely over my head.
What, you're not a trained heart surgeon, Brooker?
I am not.
You haven't done enough research.
Really, more time with Google is required before I can be a doctor.
It's true then. We were underestimating the X-Files again. They've done their research. But she then gets called out by...
say that?
Well... But obviously she's called away because Mulder uses his pseudonym again, George Hale, which I like. That goes back to Little Green Men when he uses that to fake his way to Puerto Rico. That's a nice little callback to that and the whole idea of space and telescopes and things. So that was nice. And he obviously is getting Scully's help to examine Grissom's body. So he may have Krychek now involved, but he's still going to use Scully on the side.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And then he goes to Grissom's clinic, and I thought this was interesting. That there's a little bit of the extreme fringe science put on here. That this clinic are effectively trying to alter people's dreams to help with their sleep disorders. And it did get me wondering. I wonder if this is on the fringes of possibility. What do you think? Do you think that this could actually be done?
I don't know. Let me Google that. I don't know. I mean, whenever someone says something like that in a TV show like the X-Files, it always kind of makes sense, and it always sounds like it's something doable. I kind of want to say I hope so, because it seems really easy to quote, just change people's electromagnetic something brainwave things. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it always sounds like it's something that should be doable, but at the same time, it scares me that that's possible.
Well, yeah, I think it's the great thing that the X-Files always does, in that when these very fringe ideas come out, especially when they're experiments, and in quite a lot of episodes there are some kind of experiments with drugs or technology or something going on people. It's interesting.
Hands.
Yeah, exactly. But there's always some. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm having flashbacks to that episode now. Christ. Young at heart, anyone, if they want to go back and find out about salamander hands, which we talked about last year. But yeah, I always think, well, it's interesting because X-Files always keeps one foot in. Maybe this could be done, and maybe this is an interesting idea that actually could help people get to. Obviously, this turns out to be the cover for the more insidious experiments and things like that. But yeah, it's just an interesting idea of being able to cure sleep deprivation, which is a genuine thing, obviously. After Mulder gets his little bit of information on what Grissom was up to and things like that, Krycek shows up, and he's not happy, is he? He's not happy at being ditched, like somebody's bad date, as he says.
Oh, he wasn't Mulder such an arsehole about ditching him, though?
Yeah, he was.
Just got to finish a bit of work here. You go get a car, and then he fucks off in a taxi. Yeah. Arsehole.
He is. He can be such a rude bastard sometimes. In fact, right, because then he gets a call from Scully after he's had a conversation with Krycek, actually, which is interesting, because Krycek says that, he effectively suggests he's a follower of Mulder's work, and that he's trying to position himself as a bit of an acolyte, as somebody who has followed his work and is interested in him, and he's a little bit in awe of him slightly, and that's why he's upset. But it's a nice little way of trying to get in Mulder's books. But then Scully calls, and obviously she's got some information, and he does. And from this episode onwards, I'm keeping a tally now, right, of all the times that Mulder just hangs up. Like in this one, she says, well, I need to see you, and he goes, I can make it in 2 hours. Hangs up. No bye.
No bye, no thanks.
Yeah.
No, see you in a bit, just off.
Just off. Right, so this is one, okay, of the Mulder has no manners tally. Right? Because he's terrible. I feel so sorry for people when he does this. But yeah, he has to take Krycek with him to see Scully. And this is the first time Scully meets Krycek. And she's a little bit suspicious, isn't she? And so they have this her and Mulder have this hushed conversation.
Yeah.
Don't they? And Krycek's sort of in the background going, yeah, well...
He's trying to push his way into the talk.
Yeah, I'm here too. Yeah, bye.
Yeah. Don't forget about me.
Yeah. I did like the little beat, actually, of Krycek nearly throwing up when he sees the corpse.
And just like them looking at him going, all right.
Yeah, dickhead. But again, it's Krycek playing a role.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's quite a cold-blooded assassin, really. So he would have seen and done far worse things than this up to this point. But for him then to be a bit, it's playing up that idea that he's green, that he's new, that he doesn't really know much. It's the con job he's playing. It's very good.
Yeah. It's there as much, I think, for us as it is for Mulder and Scully.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can believe that he's a bit green and a bit naive.
A bit naive, yeah. So yeah, obviously, this is the point where Scully tells Mulder that Grissom's body effectively believed that it was burning. It didn't. There's no suggestion it was, but it believed it was. So this is where the mystery is complicating as to what actually there must be some sort of psychological thing going on. And now we get to see, we get a little bit more of a window into Tony Todd's character and all this when we get to the apartment of Henry. I mean, I've seen some desperate looking places in the X-Files, but this guy, Jesus,
it is. I mean, I've seen better furnished crack houses. I mean, that sofa was pretty grim.
It was
And
horrible.
that fucking that really sad looking little radio just above his head. I was like,
Yeah.
just take it into the shower with me. Just drop it in the bath and be done with it. Fucking hell.
It's grim, wasn't it? With a bare light bulb. Who has a bare light? Even if you've got a desperate life and you can't sleep, why would you not put a lampshade up? It's ridiculous. That's not going to help you, is it? It's not going to make you feel more tired. Having a more awake, having a bare light bulb. It's just stupidity.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Actually, before we talk about it, I'll tell you what I did spot,
Yeah.
and I cannot believe I spotted this just after. Just before you go into the Quantico bit when you talk to Scully.
Oh yeah.
Did you see the red Jeep?
No.
That fucking red Jeep that is in almost every poxy X-Files episode I seem to watch. Someone working at Fox or someone working for Chris Carter has a thing about red Jeeps.
That's a red Jeep.
Frank Black drives one as
Yeah,
well.
he does. Yeah.
But it was in several episodes that you and I talked about in season 1, to the point where I was so sure you were going to ask me about it that I paused it and I got the fucking reg number off of it in the final episode because it was right next to the car that they investigate in the final episode. And it drives down the bloody street in this one. Someone on that crew drives a red Jeep and doesn't want it to not be in the shot at any point.
I feel bad that I haven't spotted the red Jeep thing. Maybe this is another tally we need to do. The
Well,
red
the thing is,
Jeeps.
you see, the last one, I wrote the reg number down because I was like, at some point I need to rewatch Millennium and see if it's the same Jeep.
Yeah. They just use the one Jeep. It's just Chris Carter's Jeep that he just says, right, this is my little Hitchcock thing. We need to get my Jeep in every single episode of the show.
Exactly. I'm sure that's what it is. Sorry.
No. We're going to keep an eye out. Right. If anyone sees red Jeeps in the X-Files, let us know. Seriously. We need to do this. We need to get a tally. But yeah, going back to the sequence with Henry, and then obviously Cole turns up, and we still don't really know who this guy is fully, but we get the picture of someone with Henry who's desperate. His eyes are red. You can tell he doesn't sleep. And he calls Cole Preacher, and we don't really know why at that point. I did think the only thing with this was, it was an interesting little scene, a very creepy moment actually, when all the bloody Vietnamese people appear and Cole starts quoting the Bible, and then obviously Henry gets shot. It's really unsettling actually. It's really well put together. But the only thing that made me stop at pause was when Henry guesses that Cole killed Grissom. I thought that was a little bit of a leap because, yeah, okay, he would have seen that Grissom's dead potentially. Although that too, how would he find that out unless he studies the paper really well? Did he get a newspaper with it ringed round?
Maybe he got a cassette tape as well.
Maybe he did.
Really gutted because that shitty radio in his apartment doesn't have a tape player.
Yeah, shit. But yeah, I just thought that was a little bit of a convenient guess. For him.
It's a massive leap, isn't it? From
it is a bit.
Dude dies under mysterious circumstances to this guy.
Yeah, you killed him by making him believe that his body burned with fire. But you can let it go because this is so well done. It's really creepy, and this is the point where you realise Cole is behind this. He's doing something with these people.
Yeah.
And because at the end, after Henry gets shot, or he thinks he gets shot anyway, Cole just sort of collapses a little bit, and he's a little bit. he's expended some mental energy, putting this in Henry's mind. But yeah, really, really good production design, really unsettling, really sort of grimy. I think very well done there. And again, a suggestion of the fact Rob Bowman's direction here is really good, and he's a bit of a cut above, really. Because a lot of this episode, this is an interesting point. A lot of this episode is in darkness, isn't it? Most of this takes place at night, or a lot of it seems to take place at night. And Chris Carter said that it was difficult because they had to do a lot of night shooting. And he said, of course, we were shooting in the middle of the summer in Vancouver, where it's the land of the midnight sun. Yeah. He said that was a challenge for them all.
I think you have to have that. It has to all be set at night because obviously, we find out a little later on what's happened to them, and I think it's supposed to make the point then that these guys, they've done all their best work at night when everybody else was asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing, really, isn't it? But it's an interesting thing that Rob Bowman points out about what he chose to do with Henry before he's shot. He says just at the moment that Henry realises he's going to be killed, he closes his eyes, rolls his head back, and thinks to himself, "It's over. Finally, relief. I can sleep."
Yep.
He said that was something I put in there because Howard Gordon had talked a lot about how these guys have been suffering for 24 years. If they know they're going to be killed, there should be a moment of release, which is really nice, you know, and it is.
And it was put across very well. It was nice and subtle, and it was really, really good. No, I spotted that when I watched it and thought that's really, really cool.
I think what I also like as well is how, obviously, in the next scene, you've got Mulder and Krycek trying to work out what the Grissom thing was. You've obviously got Henry dead now. It's a similar kind of case. And I think what I like the fact that there's kind of an organic way they start getting to the connections with Vietnam here. I thought you can see them actually starting to work together a little bit better at this point. And I think the writing here is good, and the way these guys sell this is good, because even though Mulder is still not quite happy about Krycek being there, they're starting to click a little more.
Yeah, they're working as a team much better than maybe even we thought they were going to when we first saw them together. Right,
exactly. So they head off to the clinic where they're looking for Cole now, and they've got a name, and they're putting it together. And, this is where they meet a doctor who's played by an actor called Michael Patonen, who is another one of those actors who keeps popping up in the show. He played the motel manager in Deep Throat. A very, very brief scene. He appears most memorably probably in... and he did all of them. He did The X-Files, he did Millennium, he did The Lone Gunman, even though there weren't that many of them. And I think he most memorably appears as the conductor in 731. And he's the guy who Mulder's having to get going up and down the train going, tell the driver to stop. No, tell him to carry on. No, tell him to stop. And he's running up and down the train as people are having their throats slit and all this. So yeah, he's another one of those faces that I always remember who crops up. And he obviously doesn't realise that he's discharged Cole, which is a nice little moment when they go, yeah, you sent him away yesterday. He's like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? But again, it's the suggestion that Cole can influence people's minds that he has.
That was a nice little moment where you go, it's not just he's not doing horrible things, he can actually essentially control people. And that was kind of a okay. And at the same time you then get that thing where you go, well, this dude is clearly a fucking psychopath, because this is the only time we've seen him do something non-violent with his power.
Exactly. And then as they're there at the clinic and it's all confusing, this is where we get another X again. And I said this in the host. He chooses his moments to call, because in the host he calls in the middle of Mulder being really busy twice. Yeah. And he does the same thing here. He's like, Mulder's in the middle of something, and then, oh, Mr. Mulder. He's like, you pick your times, X. Why can't you ring me when I'm at home chilling? Like, why?
It's like someone phoning you in the middle of a meeting, seeing if you want to upgrade your phone plan.
That's happened to all of us, let's be honest.
Isn't it just?
But yeah, X this time has basically said, look, I've got something I've got to give you, let's meet. But this is where there's the interesting fact about Sleepless. Now, if you're a long-term X-Files fan and you know a bit about it, you'll know that this wasn't originally... Stephen Williams wasn't originally X. Now, how much do you know about this, Brooker?
No, not that much.
Well, originally, X was going to be a woman.
Oh, and yeah.
She was going to be played by an actress called Natalia Nagulich, who is most remembered for playing Admiral Nechayev in Star Trek The Next Generation and a bit of Deep Space Nine. And this is why, after X dies, when Laurie Holden comes into the show as Marita Covarrubias, the original idea for a female informant was much earlier, was at this point. And they actually did shoot the scene with Natalia Nagulich as Miss X, or X, as she probably would have just been called.
Yeah.
In the same open sort of stadium, unfinished stadium area where he meets the X we know. And the edit is on the Season 2 DVD. So, yeah, so it's interesting how X was originally a woman. And if you if you want to find that, like I say, it is on the Season 2 DVD. It is worth watching, because she would have been a very different kind of character to Stephen Williams and what he brought into this. Immediately, though, he is awesome. Straight away.
Oh, yeah. He's got such a presence when he's on screen.
Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing.
And I think what I liked as well is the fact they used this stadium. If you think about it, it's a very different kind of meeting place than Deep Throat met him. Deep Throat met Mulder for the first time in like a toilet in a bar. And it was very enclosed. Whereas this is this massive open shadowy space where X meets him. It's almost a bit more imposing and a bit more epic, as if to say, You know, I'm going to lead you somewhere where there are shadows, and you're gonna meet me where I want to meet me, where I want to meet. I'm not going to come to you. You're going to come to me, which felt like the other way around with Deep Throat, and that's why it's a very different relationship from the get-go.
Yeah, what's quite interesting I found about when I watched it was obviously he'd said to Mulder, you know, if you're followed, I won't be there. But that is a massive, massive area that he's assuming control of. You know, and I quite like the fact that he's taken this insanely large area and gone, I know that this entire area is safe.
Yeah.
You know, you have just walked into my world.
Exactly. You've walked into my shadowy world. And there's... it would have been interesting to see how this would have worked with Natalia Nagulic, because the main reason that they changed it and they got Stephen Williams in, and then they did some ADR later to have him as the voice in the host earlier, before we actually see him, is that they didn't feel that it worked. When they looked at the dailies, they didn't feel that relationship worked. And I think to get across the fact that X is very reluctant, you know, he spells it all out from the beginning. He says, you think I want to be here? I don't want to be here. He's doing this out of a sense of loyalty to Deep Throat. For whatever reason, whether he's mentee or whatever, he's a lot more dispassionate. You know, he says it as well. You know, Deep Throat used to give Mulder a lot of like little clues and little things. He says, I'm not here to do your thinking for you, Agent Mulder. Straight away, X is very much, here's some information, you figure it out, I'm out of here, because I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And that's immediately very different.
Well, he says, doesn't he? He says, you know, my predecessor gave his life for this. I'm not prepared to do that myself.
Yeah. I won't go down the same path. He says, doesn't he? The truth is out there, but it's still out there, but it's never been more dangerous. And it's what's great about X's arc, and we will obviously get to this as we go through the episodes, is that X ultimately does become Deep Throat, really, because he gets involved in Mulder's quest a lot more than he ever thought he would and he ever wanted to. Because the more he gets to know Mulder and the more he sees what he's doing, the more he wants to help him and the more involved he gets. And it's great. And by the point he ends up suffering the same fate as Deep Throat, he's gone from being that guy who would just very, very occasionally pop up and give Mulder things when he's ready, to the guy who was willing to give his life. And it's a nice little arc for X all through. And it starts here. This is the beginning. But he's great. Steve, like you said, Stephen Williams has such presence. And he's such a great difference from Deep Throat. So immediately put that out there. He's great. But so, yeah, you've got, after that, Mulder's got this information on the military project that Grissom was running. And he, you know, X spells out that Cole hasn't slept in years. And he points Mulder towards the other guy, one of the other guys in the project, who we get to in a bit. But first, Krycek leads Mulder to a little action beat where they think they've got Cole cornered, and we've got a little bit of the which Mark Snow like to do when there's a bit of action.
Tony Black, beatboxer, ladies and gentlemen.
I just think Mark Snow was beatboxing. That's my. I don't think he's a composer at all. I think he's a beatboxer.
Yeah.
But even in this, the direction's good. There's even use of Steadicam, I noticed in this.
Yep.
In that you don't get that very often at this point in the X-Files, do you?
Well, no, because they're expensive to use, and even with their new, quite obviously higher budget, they're still an expensive bit of kit to have on set. But just a couple of quick scenes. It's literally like filming 2 or 3 scenes with an IMAX camera.
But it's suggestive of the ambition that Rob Bowman has to try and do a bit more here, which is great. But after this, they don't get Cole. But we've got Scully doing a little bit of a diary entry. She doesn't appear massively in this episode, but she does pop up every now and then. And she does a little bit of a diary entry, connecting a few dots.
Because I googled the thing that she said. It's fake.
Yeah. Brooker debunks the X-Files.
Again, I was curious. I was like, I'm going to write this one down because this one I can pause it and see what she's saying. So I took down word for word what she'd said they do. I was like, is that really a thing? So I looked and no, it's not.
Yeah, and but it leads Mulder to his hypothesis, which is that Cole is able to project his unconscious, to externalise his own dreams and put them in the minds of other people. What I liked is that even when they're not in the same room, Mulder and Scully can still have these what-if conversations over the phone. So Mulder's still going, what if Scully? What if the blah, blah, blah? And she's like, hang on a minute. But it's good that we can still get that, even if they're not in the same room, which I liked. But again, it's a big leap, though, I think, for Mulder to actually get to that point where he's talking about what Cole can do. I think, again, it's a bit of a jump, even for Mulder.
Yeah, you really needed, it's a massive guess for the character, and what you kind of needed a reason for him to make that guess. Like, if we'd have gotten up the stairs in the previous scene and seen the two SWAT guys, panicking and aiming at each other, and seen that something was clearly going on, then he could have guessed that because he'd have seen it firsthand. But to just guess that that's what he's doing seems insane.
Yeah. It's a bit crazy. It's a little bit crazy. But you get a nice little bit of bants on the phone here between Mulder and Scully, where she's joking about him having a partner who doesn't question him, and Mulder's like, Krychek's all right, he's harmless. But yeah, good bit of bants here, good bit of bants, but tapped, with a bit of sadness that they're not working together again. And you've had that a couple of times in these opening episodes. Those little conversations they have, and then you get a little bit of it's not like the old days. Which is a shame. But here we get another Mulder puts the phone down with no bye. That's 2 in this episode. Even after a nice conversation where she's helped him out and he said he'd still no bye. It's terrible. I need to have words with his mum, because something's gone wrong here. This leads him and Krychek anyway to Salvatore, who's the other member of Cole's squad, of Grissom's squad that he was working on, played by John Grease, best known as I don't know if you watched Lost, but he plays Ben Linus's shitty dad.
No, I never saw. I do recognise him from something. I meant to look it up. I don't recognise him from Lost.
He's been in a few things, John Grease. He's not like Tony Todd levels of well known, but he's one of those people who's cropped up in a fair bit. But yeah, he sticks in my mind as appearing in Lost a few times, and he's just a terrible dad. But here he tells Mulder and Krychek quite a bit, doesn't he, about the psychology of what Cole and this squad were doing. It's quite horrible, really, isn't it? What he tells them about how they felt like gods. They were jacked up in Nam, and they just went around raping and pillaging, didn't they? Really?
Yeah, it was some of the shit that comes out of his mouth is actually really quite grim.
Yeah. Because he talks, doesn't he, about how they basically just killed a school full of children. They just savaged a bunch of children in a school.
Yeah. It's just fucking horrible.
It's horrible, yeah. It's that whole... you've heard stories and reports about how people, were on a lot of drugs in Vietnam, and they may have gone a little bit off the reservation, or they may have, and the whole thing with Skinner, in a few episodes when he talks about his out-of-body experience in Vietnam, it's that whole idea that, when he killed a kid, and things like that. There was a lot of stuff going on there, and this is the extreme end where these guys feel like they're gods.
Yeah.
It is interesting how, you have them all talking about the things they did in Vietnam and the extremes they went to under this sleepless experience, and how they called Cole Preacher because he was always talking about Judgment Day. And this is where you kind of realise that it's once you find out about the other doctor who was involved, bit of a convenient guy to give them an extra guy to kill at the end, but there you go. Girardi, this is the point you realise it's all been a vengeance story for Cole, hasn't it, really? And he kind of sees himself as like an avenging angel, doesn't he?
He does, and it kind of makes you, it makes you start rooting for him a little bit as well, doesn't it? And you go, oh man, I'm rooting for the bad guy again. Fucking hell!
Yeah, this needs to stop, because it happened in a way. It's been a lot of victims lately. Like in the last episode with Ed Funch. And the guy doing the subliminal messages killing, he was a victim, really, of people who were, experimenting. And in this case, Cole, even though he's a bit twisted, he is a victim, ultimately. And at the very end, when he does actually sort of incite, almost, Krychek to shoot him, it is that whole thing of, he says, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Which is a great little line, considering the context of the episode. And it is that whole thing that he's a victim. But before we get there, you've got the climax of them getting to the train station and looking for Girardi, trying to intercept Girardi before he's grabbed. And Mulder seemingly getting shot. So he even puts the whammy on Mulder, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm using the whammy there because that's the term that in Pusher, my favourite episode, he describes Pusher as, he put the whammy on him. So I use the whammy now whenever someone does mind control, they put the whammy on him.
I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good act out, actually, that Mulder's got shot, in inverted commas. And this is where he brings Krycek into his confidence and actually explains his theory for the first time. So this is the indicative of the arc that's gone through, of how he's got to a point now where he's willing to bring Krycek into the loop that he hasn't been all the way through.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
It's quite nice as well that when you... Obviously, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but then once you get to the end and Krycek's shot Tony Todd, it's one of the few times that not only has Mulder's theory panned out, but his partner, whether it be Scully or somebody else, actually sees it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Because that doesn't happen very often.
No, well, usually, Scully's 2 minutes behind and misses all the action, or, whatever happens way off screen and no one sees it. But it's one of the few times where actually not only does Mulder's theory pan out, but the person he's working with sees it, is part of it even at this point.
And you can do that with Krycek. That's the beauty of it. Because when Krycek's involved in all the weirdness and the alien stuff, you can do that. You can have him in that position.
Yeah.
Before that, though, we get what I think is the most impressive element of production design and direction, which is where Cole is beating on Girardi. Yeah. He's got him. I thought this looked amazing, especially in Blu-ray, which how I watched it. The lighting and the atmosphere in where he's holding him is so dark and creepy and haunting.
Yeah.
It looks brilliant. This episode, I think, looks a little bit better than the previous three this season, actually. Just in terms of the way that Bowman shoots everything. And he manages to capture that real darkness. And, the idea that these guys, like you say, they never sleep. They're awake all the time. And having a lot of it set in darkness really sets that off, really. It just looks great. And then you've got Mulder and Krycek hunting through, and he said Scully then, Mulder and Krycek hunting through the darkness with the torchlights, which is great. It's great when you get the torchlights at full beam, scanning round.
Oh, yeah, it's just it's such classic X-Files, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, it's nice to have that classic scene, but with no Scully, with new partner, who at this point you still think is a good guy.
Well, yeah, exactly. And this is the question I had at the end, where obviously, Mulder's talking to Cole and he's saying, look, I can help you. We can bring these people to account who did this. But, I need your help. It's that classic. That's what's nice about this. He's actually trying to encourage Cole to give himself up so he can help get justice for what happened to them.
Yeah.
And then Krycek shoots him. Is it that Krycek was compelled to do it, or was Krycek actually trying to cover this up? If you look at it from the perspective that we know Krycek's a bad guy, was he quite keen to pull that trigger anyway?
I think he was probably keen to pull the trigger, but I do think that maybe Tony Todd knows that.
Maybe.
And this is why he done the whole thing where he makes Krycek think he's got a gun.
So he wants to die, basically.
Yes. If you hadn't had a kip in 24 years, wouldn't you want to die? I get to the end of a 48-hour stint and wish for somebody to kill me.
But in a way, I was thinking about this, actually. It's funny you should bring that up, because I was thinking, how would I react if I had no sleep? Because on the one hand, yeah, it'd be horrible. But on the other hand, I never feel like I've got enough time in the day to do everything I need to do. So if I never slept, think of all the podcasts I could record.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the thing was, because I kind of thought of this when I was watching the episode and went, like the other guy, the guy in the calf said, to start off with, it would be really cool. But, and we've all done it. We've all gone, 2 or 3 days suffering on nothing but, Pro Plus or Red Bull or coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the end of that, you've got shitloads done. But man, do you feel awful.
Yeah, it's true.
No amount of shit that you take is making you feel good. It's just keeping you awake.
Yeah.
Imagine that for 24 years.
Yeah.
No. It would have been torturous.
Yeah, and they do, in this episode, what is good is they do get that across a bit. They do get across that it must be hellish.
There's some nice makeup work on those guys as well. Like Tony Todd especially, that dude looks fucking exhausted.
Yeah, he does. Which makes sense when he says, I'm tired. I just want to sleep. But it rounds it off nicely. It does. Like I say, Girardi's a bit convenient in order to have someone they have to go after to save, but it does round it off nicely in terms of the arc of of that, how these guys are. You know, Cole is not a bad guy. In essence, the things he's doing are bad, and the way he's going about it is bad and is a bit twisted, but he's not. He is a victim of insidious experimentation, which is the classic X-Files trope, really.
Yeah, he's a victim of the same I was a soldier, I was doing as I was told, as so many of these bad guys, not just in the X-Files, but in every TV show ever. You know, I was following orders. This is what I had to do. And he is absolutely, through that, he's absolutely a victim.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he really is. So after this, we've got Mulder finding out that he's the report that X gave him's gone out of his car, and also Scully's office has been broken into. What I did like is when they're having this conversation in the corridor, there's a light flickering.
I don't. Did somebody ransack the entire floor?
Well, that's what I kept thinking.
Because there's shit everywhere. Like you say, the lights flickering. It literally looks like a bomb's gone off in this corridor. I'm like, she's only got a little office, man. You didn't need to do all that.
So he's just really efficient.
Yeah.
But I think the reason they did that is for the atmosphere, because having that flashing light really does amp up the sort of tension of, her sanctity has been violated in this case, and in order to get, to cover this up. But what I liked as well is how Mulder tells her about X. For a long time he didn't tell her about Deep Throat. He kept that to himself, and then it's only later on in season 1 she starts to realise that this guy's around, and then she meets him and things like this. But straight away he tells her, and someone's approached me with information, and I like that. I mean, obviously, he always did trust Scully. Very quickly he trusted Scully, but he really does bring her in on it this time, which is really good. And it's further suggestion that they may have a friend, but there are still people looking into what they're doing. And then we get the final scene, the big twist in the tail, the snake in the mailbox.
Yeah, the bit of a gut punch of a reveal after you've just had your really good episode with this really cool, who could, the guy that could be a new partner.
Yeah.
It's all taken away from you in an instant.
Yeah. When you see Krycek report to the cigarette smoking man, what a bastard. What a rat boy. And there's some interesting stuff here, though, how he, in the things they talk about. Firstly, Krycek makes the point that he says they know a source has found Mulder. So they know there's somebody else now who's picked up Deep Throat's mantle.
Yeah.
And they've got to keep an eye out for that. Krycek, he says an interesting word. He says countermeasures. And it makes me wonder what his mission is in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's something I think we'll get into in further episodes as we start to see more of what Krycek does. Now, we know he's a bad guy, and the audience have been brought in on that. But he very much makes the point that, look, if you thought that ending the X-Files is going to break these two up, you're mistaken. They're still working together. And then he says, Scully's a problem, a big problem. And then we get that line, every problem has a solution. And then, little stub out of the fag. And this for me, I think, is this the point where the smoking man says, right, Scully's got to go now. We've got to abduct her now. This is it. We've got to take her, physically take her away.
Well, yeah, I mean, that to me, that would be the point where, countermeasure can mean almost anything, but that would certainly be a countermeasure to Scully being a bit of a problem now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would actually. It's quite a chilling final line, isn't it? It's a great little, given the sort of undertone of military experiments and conspiracy in this one, it all fits together, doesn't it? Having this extra element of Mulder and Scully and the X-Files and all this, it really does gel well with the main story of Cole and the sleep and everything. It's a great final stinger. It's really good. And it ends the episode in a proper big, ooh. That's what I did after I first watched it. I was like, oh, what's going to happen? It's great.
Yeah, I think we all did.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. So that's Sleepless. I'm off to get some kip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Step away from the edge. Corporal Cole, I'm a federal agent. Now please step back.
Go ahead. Shoot me.
That's not why I came up here. Putting down my gun. Just want to talk to you for a few minutes. After that, you're free to do whatever you want.
I'm tired.
I know.
numb, man. You don't know. You have no idea.
1 minute is all I'm asking.
1 minute's more than I care to give. Blood's boiling in my veins. I can feel the air stinging on my skin.
What the military did to you was wrong. But maybe your testimony can help.
They cut out a piece of my brain. They made me into somebody else. And I can never get back what they took away from me. But I can stop them from taking anything more.
But first, we're going to do the X quiz because we haven't got anything to talk about. If all I could ask you with the "Do you believe in" is, do you believe we can survive without sleep?
No.
Exactly.
Well,
let's.
Yes, for about 12 hours.
That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you haven't you were one of the you might be one of the few people, you might be the only person actually, I think, who's got the maximum quiz score, Brooker. So you've got to keep your record going here.
Oh God.
So so are you ready? 5 questions and a quote on Sleepless.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay. Question 1. What was the number of Dr. Saul Grissom's hotel room?
His apartment was 606.
Oh, his apartment. Yeah, hotel room. What am I talking about? Yes, well done. 606. Excellent. Because it looks like a hotel, in a way. I keep thinking it's like a posh hotel room. I'm talking out. I need some sleep, clearly. Okay, question 2. Yeah, I'll see if I can get these words right. When Mulder's at Grissom's clinic learning about the sleep stuff, how many dysomnias and parasomnias did Grissom apparently treat at his sleep disorder clinic?
38.
Oh, bingo! Well done. You have made good notes here. Very good.
See, I'm scared though because you've gotten through like half of my notes already, so I don't know what else is coming.
Okay, question 3. What was the only surgery that Henry Willig had?
He had an appendectomy.
Yes! 3 for 3. Ah, very good. An appendectomy. Now, do you know what that is? Because I can't remember.
Having your appendix removed. Appendix
is
removed.
that appendix? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope I never get that.
No, me and all. It sounds painful.
Sounds horrible having your appendix. Anyway, quick, if you've had your appendix removed, I feel for you. Question 4. When were Grissom and Willig stationed at Paris Island?
1970.
Oh, yeah. Oh, do I give you that?
Grissom was there 68-71.
Yes!
Sorry, yeah.
And, yeah, okay, that's what I was looking for. But you're right, because, 1970 is still true. So, yeah, well done. Okay, question 4 for 4. You're going to do this. I think you can do this, mate. Seriously. Okay, question 5. What is the primary substance produced during sleep?
Serotonin.
Serotonin! 5 on 5! Oh god, this is exciting. It's like Mo Farah winning the gold. This,
yes, this is exactly like that.
It's exactly like that. Yeah. So, okay, quote question 6. Here we go, and let's have the person and the scene. I'll sharpen my pencils and see you later.
What the fuck?
Have I stopped you? Have I got you at the last fence?
I think I'll sharpen my pencils and see you later.
Yeah.
I've got no idea. Wow. No.
Oh, I feel so bad because you were nearly there. Mulder says it to Scully when he's on the phone to her, when they have the little bit of bants. He says,
okay.
I'll sharpen my pencils and see you later.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were going to do it. 5 out of
Gutted.
6. Oh, gutted. I'm gutted for you, mate. Still, that's bloody good though. You got all the key facts, so good note taking. Well done.
Mate, you should see some of the shit I paused and wrote down.
Well, all the red Jeeps, for a start.
All the red Jeeps. I got the address of the apartment, not just the door number, which you can only get if you listen to the 911 operator. So I took down, and this you won't fucking believe. I wrote down how much the ring they're selling on the TV in his crack den was going for.
Wow. I'm genuinely worried now. I'm making people not enjoy watching the show when they come on the podcast.
I watch it twice. I watch it the first time to just enjoy the episode, and then number 2, like the 40-minute episodes take about an hour and a half to go through, so I can do note taking.
Wow, I appreciate the effort. And it's paying off because you nearly got there today. So, 5 out of 6. Very well done. Big claps. Big round of applause. So, yeah, okay. That brings us to the end of Sleepless. It's been a good one, this. So, until you're back again, Brooker, and you're coming back in a few weeks to talk the wonderful Excelsis Day. Oh, yeah.
That is a weird one.
Yes. Until we get to Mulder not believing in ghost rape, where can we find you, Brooker?
I spend all of my time on Twitter. I'm at Brooker411, where I generally just bitch and moan about TV and films and music and pretty much everything. I spend all my time there. And you can find me writing and occasionally podcasting for Failed Critics.
Lovely. Great podcast, Failed Critics. Brilliant. I pop up on Failed Critics every now and then as well. It's a great bunch of lads and a really good podcast, really fun and informal and informative as well. So do check it out. Until we return, you can find us at the Xcast on Twitter, the X_cast on Twitter even, and the Xcast on Facebook. We've got a nice little community there now, growing. More and more people are getting involved, having some chatter, talking about things. So yeah, join in. Be great to see you on there. And you can email us at thexfcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. We'll read out any comments you have on the show. And, tell us all about what you love about the X-Files and about the episodes we're doing. And if you can subscribe on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating, that would be brilliant, because that will get us more known, more fans, more X-Files. It'll all be great. So, yeah, we'll be back next week for the first of our first two-part episode. Although we're not doing 2 episodes in one, but we're doing Dwayne Barry next week.
Dwayne Barry's a good one.
What a classic. Absolutely. So, Darren Mooney will be back from the first episode for that one. And, once again, cheers, Brooker. Thanks for coming back. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me on, mate. I really love it every time.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So, guys, we'll see you soon. And remember, as always, trust no one.